Kylie, in your opinion, what are the most pressing issues impacting the labor market right now?
Brad, thanks so much for having me first. But I would say right now, the big concern that everyone who is a business owner or a business leader, what they should have in the forefront of their mind is the shortage of skilled workers. Right now, we're projected by the year 2030 to have about 85 million skilled workers in deficit globally. Now, if you look at that state by state or country by country, it looks a little bit different. But ultimately, right now, what we have is 70% of all businesses can't find the people they need for the jobs they have. And that is really scary.
Terrifying. So in the staffing and recruiting industry, which is really the primary focus of those listening to this show, we feel that crunch. We can't find talent for our open orders. We're not getting the orders. But then on the back end of that, we're not finding talent for the orders. If by 2030, there is going to be an even larger shortage, what the heck are we supposed to do about that?
Well, there's a lot of things that we can do about it, I think. There are a lot of things. I think the starting point, though, is really going to be thinking about how we're finding those employees for potential jobs. Right now, when you look at the labor market as a whole, now I'm speaking specifically about the United States right now, but we have approximately 8.1 million jobs open. And we have 6.8 million available workers. These are people who are ages 20 and above. So the participation rate overall is about 69% of the people who could potentially be working currently in the United States. But what we're finding is a little bit more than 50% of that is women. Only 57% of age-appropriate women who could work are working. So I think the first step is figuring out how we can tap into the labor market specifically as to women and what their place is now that a lot of changes have been made in the way we do work.
Why aren't 43% of women who are able to work working?
Well, what we saw, quite frankly, was a huge change after the pandemic. A lot of moms, unfortunately, had to be taken out of the workforce because of the in-home need. And once they were in home, they found in a lot of cases, due to whether it be the inconvenience of going back to work because they could no longer, on whatever responsibility they may have had, they couldn't make the into the office thing work. That might have been a thing. The cost of childcare, that's another huge one. So I think really
heard that.
Trying to figure, anyone who has a kid right now, especially if you're looking at a baby age, and a lot of young mothers, a lot of women had babies right in the pandemic era. We have the COVID babies. Anyone who's a year to 4 years old, I mean, there's just not enough spaces available for that demographic of children. And because of that supply and demand, we're seeing the expense just keep rising. So I think right now, those are the two leading issues. But of course, there are a lot of factors. And it's just not women is the big thing. It's just not women, but that's a pretty big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about 43% of a demographic that is able to work is not, I want to laser in onto where, what are they doing, right? And I think we understand that. We certainly get that. What about the male population? Are we seeing that there is a large proportion of men who are able to work are not working?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is actually a transition, right? Because so many of the jobs that we had formerly were in things like manufacturing or construction or things of that nature. And the jobs aren't necessarily available like they used to be. There is a much greater push for jobs that require a higher level degree. And because of that, a lot of people are pursuing those. We are also seeing demographically across the board that entry level positions are not being filled. And in the staffing agency, or in the world of staffing, I'm sure that's where it's felt the most, because you do have so many jobs available, yet it's hard to stand out in a crowd, right? So I'm sure that's something that's felt by many of your listeners right now.
For sure. We just had multiple episodes. I don't want to misspeak because I don't know when we're going to drop this episode in relation to the others I recorded this week, but we have multiple in the pipeline with Kim Henderson. Specifically, I'm thinking of who talked about the sales process, and we have more than enough orders, but now we need to find the talent for those orders and thinking about that whole shift. But yes, that is certainly a massive challenge that our industry is seeing. So we have this talent shortage. The current shortage is only going to grow. It's only going to get bigger. When we think about staffing right now, we have a pretty, sorry folks for saying this, but we have as a stereotype, a pretty commoditized industry. We all kind of do the same thing. We put people to work. in opportunities. Now, yes, you have your mission, vision, values, you have your differentiators, what makes you unique. I understand that. But at its core, we put great people to work in great opportunities. How do you then, Kylie, propose we think differently? How do we find talent if there isn't talent to be found?
Well, I think that there is talent to be found, but it's about how you're communicating that to the potential talent, right?
Okay.
I think right now the priorities have shifted for a lot of workers. So even when I started working, and I'm quite frankly, I'm not that old, but even 20 years ago, say, people were in a position where it was about making a paycheck.
Sure.
But it's not just about making a paycheck for a lot of people anymore. It's something bigger. They want to contribute to something bigger than that. So I think if organizations, staffing agencies were able to highlight how the core mission of the companies that they were working with could be highlighted and how it's connected to something that may be a personal connection to potential employees, that's a really good way to start with that communication. Because again, we're looking at about 60% of people want to work for companies that connect with their personal values and beliefs. So telling people, hey, this is something you believe in too. This is why you should come and work for them. That's going to be a really good one. I also think, though it's not the responsibility of staffing agencies to create these jobs, right now we're in a position where 50% of people who are not employed are not going to go back to work unless it can be in some sort of remote work. It doesn't have to be exclusively remote work, but if it's not at least some, then it's not going to happen. So I think that there is perhaps some advocacy or collaboration that could be done in that realm between staffing agencies and the people that are working with them to find those employees, because a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the nature of work. And until we adapt, until businesses can adapt to what people want and need in order to be successful, ultimately they themselves are not going to be successful in business.
Yeah, I think that really comes down to educating our clients. So educating our clients on what the ideal role looks like. And yes, you might get a job order that looks like XYZ, but telling your client, hey, I get it. I know that this is what we're looking for. I understand it. But if we have XYZ plus ABC, we have your mission, vision, values, we have maybe the remote opportunity on Fridays or whatever, maybe Tuesdays, whatever it might be. If we can coach our clients to say, yes, I know this is what you're looking for, but if we advertise the job like this, we're going to get a better hit rate in terms of applications. There was a great episode. It goes all the way back to the first episode of The Secrets of Staffing Success with Jennifer Lambert, where she mentioned that typically our clients in the staffing industry are listing jobs like the ingredients on the back of a beer can. They're showing the core, what's in the beer. Instead, they should be advertising the beer. Everyone knows you drink Corona because you want to find your beach. So exactly as I'm hearing you say this, we need to take it a step further. What's in it for the candidate? What's in it for me, Brad Biley, who might apply to this job? Yes, I understand if I'm going to be a project coordinator, these are the 3 things I have to do, whether I apply to this job or the next one. So what's in it for me? What makes this one exceptional?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You need to be advertising to your potential employees as much as you are your consumers. It's a 2-part relationship in whatever direction when you look in. And until you can describe or explain to people why you should be their choice, they're never going to pick you.
What about employee retention? What can we do to make sure that people stay with us?
Yeah, retention. So retention is my absolute favorite topic because, ultimately, regardless of what leadership style or what strategy you use, you're probably gonna find people for positions eventually, right? Mm-hmm. But retention costs a lot of money, and it is something that's really hard for a lot of people, right? So, really quickly, I just think it's really important to highlight how much retention costs companies. Do you know the stats on it?
I do not, but I love data, so hit us with it.
Oh my goodness. So it just blows my mind. So every time you lose an entry-level employee, you lose between about 40 and 60% of their annual salary. That's how much it's going to cost to replace them. So mid-management goes up to 150% of their salary to replace them. And then if you're looking at top-level management, we're talking about 400% of what it might cost to pay them for a year? Is what it's going to cost to get someone in the door to fill that role. So that's a lot of unnecessary expenses for a lot of companies. And quite frankly, they just don't have the funds to be able to juggle that. So we need to keep people in. And the best and only way to do that, in my opinion, is through leadership. And that's really that's what I do. Leadership is my favorite topic. It's what I specialize in. And right now we're looking at a circumstance where we have about 20% of our labor force who are made up of boomers or people who are nearing retirement age. These are going to be the majority of your upper level management. So we can expect in the next 10 years that a pretty significant proportion of upper level management will leave, putting a pretty significant amount of stress financially on companies. So currently, to fill those roles, we're finding about only 50% of all companies have leadership development programs. Wow. Only 50%. And if you're not creating that pipeline for yourself, you are going to find yourself in a really nasty situation. Not only is it going to cost you a lot of money to fill those roles, but ultimately it's going to be a break in the line. It's going to be a break in a line because you don't have the people on the ground helping the transitionary period with that new management. And it's a huge mess if not addressed proactively. And that's what I advocate for, proactive leadership development.
So I hate thinking like the sky is falling, but when we think about a huge labor shortage where we're already at, and we think about a labor shortage of where we're going to be in, I believe you said 2035. Yeah. If we think about that labor shortage paired with the fact that we don't have, half of our organizations don't have leadership training in place, we're in trouble unless we turn this around quickly.
100% we are. 100% we are.
Go ahead, please.
I think it's really important to point out, because of what you just described, ultimately we're looking at something we need, not just leadership. We just don't need people that know how to write budgets and fill out evaluations. We need people that have the skills necessary to teach other people skills. Leaders are no longer bosses. They can no longer be the people who just give orders. That is an antiquated leadership style. We need transformational leaders. We need people who can help grow people, who can help other people develop. Oh, that's the way out of this. And it has to be done really quickly.
Where do we get started?
Well, it's about investment, right? It's about investment. I mean, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of teachers. There are a lot of school administrators. There are a lot of consultants that have always taught. Teaching in a classroom or teaching in a college setting or wherever it might be is no different than teaching in the workplace. The only difference is you're teaching people a practical skill. So I think the most important thing that any business owner, whether it be in the staffing world or in any industry, what they need to do is find a consultant who has legitimate teaching experience, who can teach them how to teach their staff to be the people they need in the roles that they have. I mean, skill development is necessary. And as things continue to progress with technology and with AI, we ultimately are going to have a workforce that does not have, even the people in current roles, they're not going to have the skills they need. So we need to quickly teach people how to be teachers.
It's so interesting to think that most promotions occur because you get really good at your job. So now all of a sudden you're a lead of that team to then do the job, right? Yes. So I'm thinking about a plant, manager who might come up because they got really good at running a line. Okay, well now all of a sudden you're going to manage that plant or that line, but you don't have managerial experience. You don't have, you call it transformational leadership experience. You're just really good at what you do.
Yeah.
And those are two very, very, very different areas, right? I'm thinking about golf because we talk a lot about golf on our other show, Insights.
Okay.
You can be a great golfer, but if you can't teach golf, that does nothing for you. You can hit the ball and you can strike the ball well, but if you can't relay that to other people, then you'll never be a great golf instructor. And it's so interesting. I'm hearing you say this out loud, and I'm understanding that this is a huge issue more and more.
Yes, absolutely. It's a huge issue. And like I said, the antiquated way of leadership, being the boss and telling people what to do, that there wasn't a time and a place that worked, but things are much more complex now. And the deficits that we have, they need to be filled. And for companies to stay modern and up to date in what they're doing, you can't just constantly be fighting these fires. It's about growth. that growth mindset, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of it. Thankfully, the teaching process, once you know how to do it, it's actually really easy. It's very, very simple. It's just we need to first change leaders' mindsets to understand you're not the boss, you're not controlling, you are growing the people around you.
Can you develop a growth mindset?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. You have to want to, though, like with anything, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're in that fixed mindset, shifting to a growth mindset is, in my mind, difficult, but I believe it can be done as well. I just wanted your thoughts on that.
No, I think it absolutely can. But as with anything, it has to be something that you want and you believe in. If you don't understand that your behaviors or your thoughts are impacting the performance of yourselves or the people around you, there's like recognizing the problem's the first step, right? So you have to understand that first.
Let me ask this. All of the data, all of the forecasting that you've just described in 20 or so minutes sounds like a huge opportunity for the staffing and recruiting industry, right? It seems like 10, 20 years from now, we're still going to need to find great talent. And it might even be a bigger need to use a staffing firm or a recruiting firm to find that talent because, one, it's going to get harder to find if there's still a talent shortage and a greater talent shortage. B, if we don't have the leadership training in place, it's going to be harder to find people who can be transformational leaders, therefore needing a staffing or recruiting industry partner. It seems like, and I have a lot of conversations with people saying, hey, do you think this is still going to be a thing? Is staffing still going to be a thing in 10 or 15 years? Absolutely, in my mind, especially now knowing what you just shared.
Yes. I think there's a huge opportunity right now. And I mean, when we think about business, it's all about developing as our demands also develop. And if I hypothetically were to be running or owning a staffing agency, my priority right now would be finding someone to help me create a program specific to vetting leaders and helping them develop the baseline skills necessary to help other people grow. It's like I said, it's not hard to be a teacher. It's not hard to teach skills, and it doesn't take a great deal of development. But on the back end, it will be the thing that sets staffing agencies apart from their competitors, whether or not they can produce the people that can help other people grow.
Yeah. That's super interesting. Again, going back to the stereotype of the industry of knowing that it's sort of a commoditized industry that acts transactionally. I need to find a director of digital marketing. Go find me a director of digital marketing. Knowing what you just said, that framework of, well, how instead can we develop, can we coach, can we find the right leaders, can we find transformational leaders who can actually impact the organization? That is a true differentiator in terms of the types of talent, the types of talent that you're going to provide your clients instead of just, hey, here's an order, here's a person.
Yeah. It's a big difference. I mean, filling orders, anybody can fill orders, but what's going to be the thing that sets a staffing agency apart? That's the thing. And it's needed.
So let me ask you this again. It is August at time of recording. You listening to this today might end up being September based on when we actually drop this episode. If someone's listening saying, I hear you, I am bought in 20 minutes, you've changed the way that I'm seeing where I want to position my staffing firm. What can I do this afternoon to take one step forward?
One step forward? Well, they're probably just going to want to contact me. They're probably going to want to contact me. Outside of that, and we can talk more about me in a little bit. Yeah. I think outside of that, they first need to understand what this looks like within their own organization. You can't help other businesses function to this caliber unless they themselves can model the behavior. It's that simple. Okay. So until you have a structure internally where you're helping to develop your leaders and develop your teams through very clear through clear mentorship and training programs, and can have the structure so that you can then communicate to your clients why this is a valuable asset, then you probably shouldn't, you can't put the cart before the horse, as they say, right? Yeah. So I would start by saying I would do a really true, clear assessment on one's own leadership development processes internally. After that, if they are not in line to what you think you would like to offer another company, you need to immediately start making steps forward to make it a thing that you live and breathe every single day. And that's going to be really, really important. Also think, I mean, the staffing agency, they're just as vulnerable as other industries when it comes to skilled workers. I mean, you are also going to be facing these challenges. So what are you doing proactively to make sure it doesn't become a bigger issue than it needs to be? All important parts, but doing that internal assessment, that's going to be the first step, always and forever.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. Part of me is saying it's 300% in terms of internal turnover, but I know in the staffing and recruiting industry, internal turnover is exceptionally high. Exceptionally high. Yes, exceptionally high. And if anybody listening, if I got the 300 number wrong, I apologize, but I remember seeing that somewhere. It is exceptionally high. And thinking that we cannot coach our clients on how to do that if we do not get our own home settled first is a critical first step. And I'm hearing that loud and clear.
Yes, it absolutely is. And I mean, there's so much in regards to retention outside of the leadership development component of it. I think it's really important, again, for an emphasis to be put on staffing development. Like, how are you helping your employees grow? If currently 63% of people are leaving jobs because they believe they can't move upward within their current organization, how are you changing that to keep them? That's really important for everyone right now.
Let's talk about internal training. How can we begin to level up our current talent to get them to the role that we know they can be in?
Right. So I think the first step is clearly define mentorship programs. There's no reason why any employee in any job should not have someone that they frequently or routinely meet with to set goals with. I mean, there are some really simple structures that businesses can put in place to make sure that there's frequent monitoring and feedback so that people they don't just continue to meet their expectations, but they can strive to exceed them and new expectations can be made. So first step, mentorship programs, that's going to be really important. The second is going to be creating a culture of learning. You just don't want to be that organization or that business that is going to give the annual sexual harassment or whatever type of training you're providing. That's just seen as a type of thing. There needs to be skills-based development opportunities that are clearly defined and clearly related to the next role or responsibility an individual might be pursuing. Now, those trainings, I know that for a long time, they all looked like a video that people would watch with maybe a multiple choice quiz or maybe an in-person training done by HR for an hour. Well, the thing is we're learning a lot about people's brains right now, and that really is not the ideal way to progress forward. As more people become better in tune with the type of learner and thinker they are, it's going to be necessary to give micro learning opportunities. So these are short, targeted periods or pieces of information that people can see, they can do it, and they can move forward. The more frequently people are given those opportunities, studies have also found the more willing they are to do that in work learning, which is just going to help the company overall. So that's the direction I think that training needs to go right now. And big investments. I mean, it's an investment right now, but it's really an investment in the company's future long term.
It's an investment, but it's a necessary investment. And if anything is necessary or critical to the growth of your organization, then it's something worth looking into. Everybody wants a roadmap. Everybody wants to know what to take to get from A to B, right? Yeah. Whether it's health and fitness, whether it's a roadmap because you're lost and you got to figure out where you're trying to get to, or if it's just, hey, we need to know I am currently the director of digital. I think the next step is X or Y. What does it look like to get there? And more importantly, what do I need to do to get there? Right? How long is it going to take? What do I need to do? What sort of skills do I need to learn or develop? I think that's huge. And I think that's critical. And again, because we're in an industry where it's very transactional as a stereotype, I think we're overlooking that massive opportunity. We're making the placement today. We're not thinking about what that placement might mean tomorrow.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly true.
So where does internal training start? Is that, again, speaking to somebody like yourself, is that maybe, heck, a YouTube course? Is it looking at very specific on-the-job type of mentorship? Where do we even begin with that?
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll talk more about me in a little bit. But I think first, we need to do an inventory of skills that are currently in deficit within the organization. What you're going to want to do is prioritize the skill sets that you're having the most difficulty filling. So these are probably going to be your entry-level positions. Now, there are a lot of jobs available there. So we need to think about what things are we willing or able to take on in potential employees, maybe people that might fill some of the requirements for a position. How do we make sure that they get those things that they need in order to do the job that's in front of them? That's going to be the first step. So internal inventory is going to be super important, prioritizing those skills from the ones that need to be done the most or most frequently to the ones that maybe are going to be done less frequently. And I think it's really going to be important for people to be considerate of things around neurodivergence. I mean, that is a big topic right now in the training and development sphere, making sure that opportunities are accessible. You gotta open them up. That's the way to do it.
Let me ask you one final question before I let you go here and before I give you the opportunity to share a little bit about yourself. Should the staffing industry be afraid of this looming talent shortage, or should we see it as a huge opportunity?
Oh, it's a wonderful opportunity if approached the right way. Right now, people have a need, an endless need, and there are people to fill the roles. But again, people need to understand, staffing businesses need to understand, they need to better communicate why they are the person, what jobs they are offering that are going to set them apart from everybody else. And they also need to understand that they're a model. They're a model for other businesses. So if you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. And right now is a great time to start doing it before the need is too significant for us to address.
She is Dr. Kylie Bragdon. Kylie, before I let you go, I want to give you the floor and share a little bit about yourself so that individuals can get to know you directly from you.
So Dr. Kylie Bragdon, I'm a transformational leadership consultant and public speaker. I'm the owner of the company The Kind, which basically helps individuals and companies become the kinds of things they want to be. Now, I primarily focus when it comes to businesses and helping them acquire, retain, and develop employees. So I very much so every day talk this talk and walk this walk. And if companies are hoping to set themselves apart, if they understand the magnitude of the situation that's in front of them and want to give themselves the leadership skills necessary to move forward in this more modern industry, they should definitely look me up. It's thekind.ca, or they can email me directly at Kylie@thekind.ca.
Kylie, before I let you go, I got to run you through our rapid fire round of 2 questions I ask everybody that come on the show. You got a second?
Got it.
The first, one book that has fundamentally changed your life.
Fundamentally changed my life. Actually, I read this fairly recently, a year or so ago. The Myth of Normal. Have you read it?
I have not.
So The Myth of Normal, it does a really wonderful, I always forget the author's name, and I botch his name anyways when I say it, but it basically breaks down the human development process and how we have so many factors that influence our outcomes. And by better understanding those influences, we ourselves can better help ourselves and the people around us grow. Again, I'm very much so into the growth and development process, and being able to help people move forward is my favorite thing to do. And that book has really helped me understand how to do that better.
Friends, I say it on every show. You think this is a question for you and how to build your library. It is truly just for me to build my book library. So Kylie, it's already in the Amazon cart. It'll be here in a couple days.
Perfect.
I appreciate the recommendation. One more question for you. Somebody just starting in the staffing and recruiting industry, what advice are you going to tell them?
Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I mean, when it comes to any type of job or employment interface where you have to communicate with people frequently, it's not going to work for you if you are shy, if you're afraid of making mistakes, if you are afraid of rejection. Like, it's just part of the game. So be willing to move forward confidently, and you're going to absolutely slay it.
She's Dr. Kylie Bragdon. Kylie, can't thank you enough for coming on the show and taking the stage with me.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.